that was given us. Or let it slip away. Scatter it carelessly. Trade it for what has no worth.
James Jones, who had written From Here to Eternity, one of the great novels of World War II, wrote The Thin Red Line. It's the story of Charlie Company, Jones's unit that went to Guadalcanal and fought in the jungles there. Terry Malick wrote a screenplay from that, feeling that this was a story that would evoke a new kind of experience with war films.
And it's an extraordinary profile of men at war.
This great evil, what seed, what root did it grow from?
What we've tried to do is weave several stories at a number of different levels. We tell the story of a group of men going into battle and the relations between them and what effect that battle has on them. But at the same time, we're trying to place that battle within a sort of an overall context, an environment, so that we can look at how the war affects those individuals and how the individuals themselves react both to it and specifically to each other. There are three central relationships that drive the story. There is a relationship between Nolte's character and that of Elias Koteas, which is a sort of subordinate relationship. It's an observation on Nick, who is himself in a position where he is forced to push the men below him. That power is passed down to Elias, who is immediately under Nick, and in turn has to sort of translate that drive and power to his men.
Guadalcanal may be the turning point in the war. It'll cost lives, Starles. Is that what's troubling you? No, sir. I explained to you the importance of this objective. How many men do you think it's worth? How many lives?
Colonel Tall is the battalion commander. He's basically the outside influence in this story. I mean, the story is primarily about the individual privates that had to fight the war. They're the ones that had to do the killing and get killed.
We're going straight up that hill there.
You can't do that, Colonel.
Well, there's no way to outflank it. On the left, there's a cliff that falls straight down to the river. The Japanese hold the jungle. It has to be taken from them.
What about water, sir? Water's not getting up here. My men are passing out, sir.
The only time you worry about a soldier is when he stops bitching.
Tall is the guy that pushes these men to go up the hill. Tall's not going to die himself. Tall is not going to kill anybody. I mean, he will at a distance with artillery and by his orders. And Tall is going to take all the recognition.
One more thing, Starles. It's not necessary for you to ever tell me that you think I'm right. Ever. We'll assume it.
Then you have a different sort of relationship between Sean Penn's character, Sergeant Welsh, and Jim Caviezal as Private Witt. The young private is somebody who is a questioner. He's somewhat of a philosopher.
Everyone looking for salvation by himself. He's like a coal drawn from the fire.
Sean's character, Welsh, is a little more of the hardened, somewhat cynical sergeant who's been through it before, feels that survival is the main thing that he can achieve, out of this conflict. And Witt's character, on the other hand, feels that there must be more to this than just the carnage and surviving the carnage.
In this world, a man himself is nothing. And there ain't no world but this one.
You're on their top. I've seen another world. What he is dealing with is his past. That we all have one. And sometimes our past can dictate what our future is going to be like. He feels he's indebted to, you know, as far as losing his parents. He blames himself for his father's death. So he's trying to make amends with that. And that's a journey that he goes through. I wondered how it would be when I died. What it'd be like to know that this breath now was the last one he was ever going to draw.
The third relationship, which is a little more abstract, is a relationship between Ben Chaplin's character and his wife. His character is driven by the love for his wife and the importance that love and that relationship places on him.
Why should I be afraid to die? I belong to you.
Be put into somewhere, a place of truth, horror, terror, without that person, and trying to exist through his love. In such horrible conditions, it's the only thing that keeps him going.
Creating the fierce World War II Battle of Guadalcanal took the cast and crew to the battlegrounds at Guadalcanal Island and the jungles of Australia. The experience began with a week-long simulated boot camp where the stars of the film would become privates in the Army.
I mean, we just got here 2 days later after getting to Australia, which is the furthest place I've ever been, and you're in a tent with no bottom and poisonous spiders and snakes and stuff around.
It gets kind of cold in there, and it was always raining. In the jungle, you just stay wet, and at night it gets cold. You had to get next to a guy real close to share his body heat because it got pretty cold.
Not even funny at this point, working early in the morning. We did a lot of weapons training, a lot of hikes, some tactical stuff, maneuvers, assaults. Yeah, it was quite hard. It was so real. It was the realest war games I've ever played, you know, and it was essential. It was so essential.
We're not just actors being, well, okay, here's your wardrobe, here's your weapon, and go ahead, play soldier. We're actually, you know, sticking it out together, and we're all bruised, and we're all in pain, and so it makes it much more real.
Count started to slow down toward the end there, Clyde. You getting tired out here?
But the main point of this is twofold. Soldiering them up, which can only be done in the bush, repetition in terms of tactics, strategy, wearing them out, fatiguing them through night watches, 50% alert, and eat MREs, meals ready to eat, sea rations, things like that, learn the weapons so they're not props, learn tactics, and live like grunts. The second aspect, and just as important, is the bonding that goes on out here. The bonding of infantry is different from the bonding of fraternities. These men will walk out of here defending each other, and it carries over to the film.
Charlie Company, check!
After surviving the intense physicality of boot camp, the actors were now faced with an even more difficult task, adding the emotions of living through war.
Here we are raised in a society that teaches us not only strike, hurt another person, kill another person, but not to speak ill of another man. So when they said, okay, here's a rifle, go and kill now, rocks your world, and many of them had to do that.
The further away you are from the rifle in the hand or the mortar shell coming into your foxhole, the further you are from that, the more you're able to distance yourself from the emotional and physical realities of what your actions are causing.
I personally recommend you for the Distinguished Service Cross. You saved all our lives. I've never seen such bravery.
But yeah, people who are really willing to give their lives for God and country in a manner that wasn't considered naive, you know. There was still a nobility and virtue in that kind of an honor.
If we can reduce this bunker, I think we can take this ridge. So I'm asking for volunteers. Go back up there and knock it out.
Sir, I'd be glad to go back up and lead the way back for a party.
All right, Bell.
It's as much about people as it is about the war. You know, if you take war as the ultimate horror, what redeeming factors are there in that? There are some.
James Jones wrote a story about his own experiences in war, that men go into war not knowing why. They're usually indoctrinated to go in for idealistic reasons. Then they realize they're going to die or they're going to have to kill somebody, and they become tremendously horrified. And in that moment of fright and horror, they literally lose their self. Something is replaced once that self is gone, and that's this unbearable compassion of love. He said, after you feel that and have lost yourself, he said, then you know you will die for your buddy. And he said, this is one of the strange ironies that come out of this terrible, diseased idea of war.
You ran my lady! You killed her! I wanted to know I died like a man!
It shows about the relationships between the people and this thing in their life that is Guadalcanal, and what that does to them and how it changes them all.
God damn it, don't argue with me. I'm trying to stars. Go get that man. I said, really, he's not the one we should be thinking of. God damn it, all of you! Am I familiar or am I not? Am I the captain or a goddamn private?
Ultimately, we can only relate to things in a very immediate way. Like, we can intellectually understand someone's pain or suffering from a distance, but the only time we really totally understand it is when a person's right next to us.
Take it easy, son. Take it easy.
I think the film will be experiential. I think that people will develop a strong affinity and understanding towards the characters. They will respond to the narrative structure, but also I think they will respond to the overall poetry and lyricism of the story.
What's this war in the heart of nature? The land contend with the sea.
This battle took place in an environment in the Pacific that had sort of rarely been, visited. It was very untouched, it's very beautiful. And then, you have all that is good and bad about the force of modern technology and Western civilization sort of clashing. It's quite a juxtaposition.
I want you to get up there and see what the situation is. The goddamn the Admiral got up and come to Los Angeles, Stars! Out!
This beautiful tropical paradise of green, of lustrous fruit and vegetation and blood.
South Sea Island people, living in this kind of beautiful setting, all smiling, all laughing, all enjoying. And then once that's interrupted by this kind of savagery, then everybody becomes a savage. The beauty of the jungle and the horror of war, the beauty of this paradise in the South Pacific and men away from home, it creates an experience that is very different.
This is literally about making a very pure statement. It's much more along those sort of, philosophical lines, actually.
Let me not betray you. Let me not betray my men.
We are rolling it. Rolling! And action!
Terrence Malick is the director of The Thin Red Line. Terry is a very private person, and he doesn't seek out sort of public attention. He prefers to let his work speak for himself. After film school, he was able to go very quickly into making two highly acclaimed pictures, Badlands and Days of Heaven. And after Days of Heaven, basically has dropped out of sight for 20 years.
There's a reason Terry wasn't done a movie in a long time. He hadn't found the right material. He hadn't found the right voice to do it with.
Terry loved the James Jones novel, and I think he saw in it an opportunity to do an exploration of war on film, unlike anything that had been done previously. And I think that was the inspiration.
3, 2, 1, action!
He's a man that's only going to do a few films, so every one he does is going to be, I suppose, his last. And when a man is doing the last thing, there's no compromise.
He hits us visually, but he also hits us emotionally with everything he does. He interrupts, you know, every piece of our being.
I feel sorry for you, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little. This army's gonna kill you.
Everybody was excited, the thought of working with Terrence Malick, who is like the phoenix, has risen from the ashes after 20 years of not working, and here he is, you know.
He's a very intuitive filmmaker. He'll do a shot, but then he'll see something over there during the shot, and then he'll change it. And then the actor will do something, he'll change it again. So things are always morphing.
Do you see the spirit in these men? Do you see the new spirit?
His process is somewhat similar to a poet or a painter. He likes the visual sort of presentation, as it were, to have a sort of a strong musical or poetic feel to it. And just the way he works in constructing the story, you will find that there are sort of similarities in construction of the picture to the way perhaps you would construct a piece of music.
The lyrical beauty of Malick's visual storytelling proved to be an inspiration for Oscar-winning composer Hans Zimmer. It was his music that would enhance Malick's detailed and epic canvas.
A musician has a very good sense of rhythm, and sometimes some of these lines, the voiceover lines, the narration, it should be like a song, you know, and Terry sees himself very much as my lyricist.
What's keeping us from reaching out, touching the glory?
When you don't have the mortar shells going off, and you actually create this sort of sense of silence, and in a peculiar way I've been trying to create a sense of silence, or staticness, or something that you can just observe, and maybe you get drawn in.
It's not a traditional score. We have introduced a number of different elements to help us accentuate the orchestral score.
Because it takes place in the Solomon Islands, we recorded a lot of Melanesian music. They have these wonderful choirs, and so we're using some of that because there's a purity about it, and then the score really uses this idea of fate. You know, there's this one ray of light coming through the cloud. You know, this sort of divine sense, which is it's the antithesis to seeing people, you know, shoot at each other.
It's more about, you know, the human side of it. You know, it's not, you know, who's right, who's wrong. It's the pain that we all endure.
It's a great script, and Terry Malick's an artist.
Cord between us. Can't nobody cut it now.
The journey came full circle as the filmmakers and ensemble cast of The Thin Red Line were reunited for the celebrity-filled premiere in Los Angeles. It was the opportunity to welcome back a Hollywood master and view his artistry in motion.
You know, I always loved Thin Red Line. I knew that Jones had been a soldier himself and shot a private. So he was very passionate storytelling from an intimate level.
It's a meditation on the evils of war, as powerful as any personal prayer that you could say in a moment of tragedy.
It was so physical and so mentally exhausting that if I didn't really conserve my energy, you know, you're not getting up the next morning.
Still somehow evolving and still haunting me in a lot of ways, so I'm looking forward to seeing it again. So it really got to me, and I just need to see it again because it was just too much.
I want you to attack right now with every man at your disposal.
I've lived with these men in reserve for 2.5 years, and I will not order them all to their deaths.
Following the premiere, the cast and invited guests continued the celebration in grand style inside Stage 8 on the 20th Century Fox studio lot. The elegant surroundings were further highlighted by an 80-piece orchestra, which played Oscar-winning composer Hans Zimmer's highly evocative score.
The last thing we wanted to do was do another movie which goes, oh, war's hell, because that's an old story. But, you know, just to show something between heaven and hell, and somewhere there's humanity, somewhere there's fate.
To date, critics and audiences have lauded the film and Malick's unique craftsmanship. For the men of the Thin Red Line, it was a singular experience they will never forget.
Well, I hadn't seen the film, so tonight was the first time I saw it. It's a very hypnotic film. It's just mesmerizing.
It was really a teamwork. The way Terrence directs, and the way he puts other people before himself. He's a class act. He's a far better person than he is a director, and that says quite a bit because he's a pretty brilliant director.
If you look at the history of storytelling, going back to the Greeks, there are really two kinds of stories that have dominated over the ages. The first are love stories, and the second are war stories.
Filmmakers have to find a story that really is compelling to them and that they believe can be made into a film that will move and entertain people. I enjoy films that don't state too directly what their underlying themes are. I have great regard for the audience, and I think it's one of the pleasures of good films that the audience can come to it and write their own conclusions rather than being told how to perceive a film.
It's a film that leaves you with a whole sensation, and I think you're gonna have to think about it when you walk away.
Maybe all men got one big soul. Everybody's a part of. All faces of the same man. One big self.